Welcome to an ice-cold, chilly battle report this time as we return to the Goblins. Now, this is going to be a little bit different because it's only 1,250 points in preparation for Ulti Bash 7, which by the time you've seen this video is probably ongoing. And lower points level, there's going to be 5 games in that tournament, and it's played on a 4x4 table. So I thought I'd get some practice in here. Going back to the Goblins for this one because I had a list in mind when I heard the points level, and we will go through it as we look at the table right here. So you can see I've put a bit of masking tape across this lovely snowy landscape there to get rid of the extra 2 feet on the end of it. And this will be the control scenario. So I'm going to assume that this one is likely to be used in the tournament because it's one of the scenarios in the book where they actually give you specific instructions regarding lower point games and how to deal with it on this particular table size. Because normally you would have 6 areas to contest and then the one opposite you in the centre is worth more to you, but on the smaller table size they suggest that you just divide it into 4 and the one opposite you on your right is worth more if you control that one. So my Goblin list, it's quite similar to the lists that I was running at around about 2,000 points, but with certain alterations obviously because you can't take multiples of certain things. One thing you can take multiples of, definitely, is trolls, which is why there are 3 troll hordes in there, and as usual they come with the upgrades that I think are the most important for them. So we've got one with Dwarven Ale, one with the Chalice of Wrath, and one with the Staying Stone. That one varies depending how many points are left over. Then a Troll Bruiser with the Blade of Slashing, which I think is a great upgrade for him. It's very, very cheap if you've only got 5 points left over. Definitely worth putting it on him just to give yourself more hits with his very powerful attacks. Then we've got a Mincer. We've got 2 regiments of Fleabag Rider Sniffs for some ranged support and some speed. We've got a single War Trombone, and we've got a Flaget with the Diadem of Dragonkind. So we've got 2 breath attacks, 2 shooty fast units that don't suffer any hindrance for moving and shooting or turning round and shooting. So there's a reasonable amount of flyer defense in there, considering the low point level. Managed to get 4 items in there that can do that. And the core of trolls is hopefully going to hit hard. The one possible downside in this list, there's not a huge amount of nerve, I would say. I don't have any regular goblins, which provide some extra nerve in there. So potentially some lucky rounds of shooting could take out multiple troll units and then leave me a little bit stuck because they're really what this army is counting on to do the business. And on the opposition side, well, let's just go through my little formation here. It's quite compact on this table size, you can see. There's not much to be said about that really. Mincer behind because it has a habit of getting wavered whenever it faces any shooting. The opposition, it's a dwarf army, but it has elven allies, as blasphemous as that may seem to some of us. Now, there are 2 units of elven archers there. There's a regiment and a troop. Behind them there's the dwarf steel juggernaut, which is, I think it's a kind of a hero monster. I think it's one of the new Vanguard models actually, but it does have rules in here now. So that's quite interesting. It's high defense, it's got a ranged attack, it's got blast on its attacks, but it doesn't have many attacks. So it's pretty tough and can dish out a bit of pain. Then, Herneus and his ranger formation. So I believe it gives them all elite. And there is also another regiment of Herneus's special hunters of doom, and I think they have the upgrade that Herneus just allows 1 unit in the army to be upgraded, perhaps, which gives them all elite. So pretty much the whole army is elite apart from the steel juggernaut. So that's going to be some quite potent shooting, and of course the dwarf rangers aren't that terrible in close combat either. They do have a bit of crushing strength when you actually get there, I think, and Herneus is a bit of a beast. There's also a ranger captain, I think, which is represented by an elf, but it is actually a dwarf, and you can see on the left of that wall there. So, these are the vanguard moves first of all, and a couple of the units move up into the woods so they can shoot in the first turn at quite a variety of juicy targets. And you can see that the elves have the vanguard ability as well. So a bit of an advance just to make sure they're in the optimum position to shoot in the first turn. So turn 1, the Goblins win the roll-off and I elect to go first because I don't want to get shot to pieces. So everything is moving up as fast as it'll go, all the trolls at least, and I think on the right perhaps they haven't gone as fast as they can go because I don't want to put multiple units within charge range of the Dwarves, because obviously trolls much faster than Dwarves, there's no need to needlessly put myself in charge range, and if they want to move backwards out of my charge range, that means they're very limited in what they can shoot, and that's fine by me because I don't want to be taking too many turns of shooting, hence going first. The Fleabag Sniffs, I've kept the unit on the left down there behind the wall because I have a feeling they're going to be shot. They're really a juicy target that any of my opponent's shooty units, which is all of them, could potentially take off in one hit, those Sniffs. So I'd rather they didn't get shot until they've had a chance to do something, especially in this scenario where they could really sit at the back and claim table sections for me, should the chance arise. So, the very, very brief turn 1, not much happens at all. I don't think I did much with my shooting. I'm not sure if I did any wounds at all with my Sniffs. Probably 0. Okay, turn 1 for the Dwarves, and as you can imagine, a barrage of crossbow bolts is going to rain down upon the centre of the table, and a bit of movement, but not too much. You can see a human hand and a tape measure at work there, making sure they're not going to get charged by trolls next turn, and there's how they end up angling themselves. So a little bit of a deterrent to me just marching straight forward. Bit of a flank action going on there with some of the archers. And what does this shooting accomplish from over here? Well, look at that, 6 damage on the troll horde and 3 on the bruiser. And that is the troll horde with the staying stone there, the little obelisk at the front representing that. And then the shooting from over here, there's of course the Juggernaut and both those units of archers. They put 1 damage onto the mincer and put the troll bruiser up to 5 damage, and 2 onto the troll horde over here that has the dwarven ale represented by a dead elf. And the troll bruiser becomes wavered as a result of all that attack, and I can tell you that the troll horde on the right there were 1 away from becoming wavered, so that staying stone definitely paid for itself there, preventing them from becoming wavered, because if both of those units had been wavered, that would have really cramped my style big time on this side, because there's 3 juicy, shooty dwarven units there that would get another turn to keep plinking away, basically, unchallenged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw that troll unit into combat with whatever it can reach, one of those dwarf units. It may end up getting killed, but I just want to tie them up, because if one of those dwarf units decides to take a flank charge on them as a result of that, that's okay by me, because that means they're spending a turn not shooting and I can set up more charges against them after that. So I may have to sacrifice those trolls there, but that's okay. Troll bruiser, becoming wavered isn't that big of a deal, he doesn't have that many attacks compared to the hordes, so if someone had to become wavered, he's probably a decent choice. Turn 2 for the Goblins. So the Flaggett is staying in range of these Sniffs to keep them inspired in case any archers turn around and target them. And the other Sniffs move up onto the hill because they're all going to be targeting the small unit of elves, which are the only ones that aren't in cover. And I just want to pelt them with shooting, and I only do 4 damage but do manage to waver them, which is okay. I was hoping to just delete them since they were out in the open and I had multiple units shooting at them. The mincer actually moves backwards at this stage because I'm thinking about the scenario here. I don't just want to leave it out in the open to get shot in the flank repeatedly. And of course, prior to moving it, I wasn't sure whether I was actually going to kill that unit of archers that were certainly looking into its flank. So, had I known they were going to become wavered or killed, then I could have maybe taken a bit more of a chance with the mincer and pushed it up. I think the deployment was possibly a mistake with the mincer though, because having it behind trolls, who, under the hail of shooting, could have become wavered, could trap the mincer in there, so perhaps I could have put that out on the front line, maybe on the right. The trolls do charge straight into those dwarves in the woods though. Hindered charge, but that's fine. Just throwing them in there to start the combat going and to stop the hail of bolts. They do a bit of damage. And there's how it's looking at the end. So you can see with the mincer, if I'd positioned it on the right flank, I would have had another unit to threaten those dwarves with if I'd pushed it up on the front line with all the others. And when you're against a gun line, you want to present multiple juicy targets to them. You don't just want them able to focus everything on one unit that's being a threat and everything else behind, so they can just pick off the threats that file in one by one. It's different if you've got units to screen with, rather than if you've just got multiple hard-hitting units. Turn 2 for the dwarves / elves. So of course this was coming, flank charge. It's one of those situations where you put your opponent in a situation where the best move isn't ideal. Because really it probably is the best move here, going for the double charge to kill those trolls. But it's also what I was hoping for. I did not want to face another turn of shooting, so I'm quite pleased with that. And you never know, if they fail to kill those trolls, which is possible, if unlikely, then one of those units is going to get flanked or rear charged. Over on this side, the wavered elves, not doing much. And of course, if I'm going to waver anyone in this opposing army, then the elves would be the best choice because they don't have headstrong, unlike all the dwarves. A bit more backing off from some of the other units, and they're going to do some shooting now. So, the troll horde with the dwarven ale takes some damage from that shooting, and the sniffs on the hill that just popped up to shoot a minute ago. I'm regretting putting them there now since they've taken 6 damage. They could have just stayed behind the hill and maybe just not moved for the entire game, really. And they could have found shooting targets without putting themselves in danger with being nimble and really fast. So the dwarf units that aren't occupied fighting then get this unit up to 8 damage. This is the dwarven ale troll unit, so they're in a bit of danger now. And they do become wavered as a result of that, but they do have dwarven ale, so they'll be hoping to shrug that off and go into combat next turn. The sniffs don't have as much luck though, they are toast. And in the woods, the troll horde are killed by the double charge as expected, but I've now got the opportunity to charge both of these units now. And there's how they look when they're finished being moved by those human hands you can see there. So that's how they've left themselves facing. And looking at this situation here, as soon as those units had finished being rotated, my mind was immediately thinking, can I get my troll horde into the back unit there? Because if I send them into the front unit, that unit isn't even damaged yet, so making a hindered charge into the front of them may very well not kill them. It's unlikely to kill them, and the trolls would then get flanked by the dwarf unit up behind the wall at the top there when they bounce back an inch, and the bruiser would only be able to hold up the unit behind. So if I can turn the troll horde enough to charge the unit at the back, then they're my most valuable unit there. They've got higher unit strength than the bruiser, and they can just dish out much more pain. So I could then use the bruiser just to attack the front unit. So to work out whether that was possible, we had to actually get a base that was the same size, and then blue tack a pencil into the exact centre of it, and then rotate it that way to make sure it was staying in the perfect spot for the pivot of the unit. There are tools you can get that do this job, and I haven't found one that's absolutely perfect. What you would really want, kind of 2 bases stuck together, dead in the centre, so you can keep one in the exact spot it was in and rotate the top. I haven't seen one exactly like that, but that would be the ideal tool. If anyone knows of something like that, let me know, because I would be very interested in acquiring something like that. But it turns out that those trolls do have an angle with a single pivot to get to the back dwarf unit, so I'm very pleased with that. So, turn 3 for the goblins, and all these little shooter units around here are going to try and finish off that troop of elven archers that were damaged, and with the trombone as well, they do manage to finish them off. And over here you can see that the trolls did get into that unit that was already damaged, and because of that I was able to finish them off and then turn towards the flank of those dwarves there. The troll bruiser into the front of the other unit, and he may well get flank charged, but that's okay because that's moving the dwarves out of their little shooting hideaway, and they're going to be hindered by the wall when they come in, even though the dwarf rangers have Pathfinder. then that's not going to help when there's a wall involved, an obstacle there. So the bruiser might actually survive all that. So it puts me in a good position here. And that one unit of dwarves on its own probably wouldn't have a chance of killing the bruiser in one round of combat, in my opinion. So it's probably going to have to sacrifice the shooting of the other unit to join in with the combat. And over here you can see that the troll horde failed their headstrong roll. So they're just kind of stuck in no man's land. The mincer has pushed all the way up though now, presenting another target and giving my opponent more to think about. And I've presented its flank as well to the archers on the left, the archer regiment, because I would rather them shoot the mincer, who's not currently in range to attack anybody, rather than the troll horde, who are already up to 6 damage, and they could easily kill them with one round, especially if the characters join in with the shooting as well. I would much rather them target the mincer. So that's presenting a little bit of a threat. And it's especially a threat if the dwarf regiment behind the wall charge into the flank of the bruiser. Then the mincer is actually a big threat to them, so it would have to be targeted. So it's just there to present an alternative target to stop the trolls becoming the primary one. And you can see it's looking quite good at the moment, but it's still somewhat up in the air, because some of my units, it looks like I've got a lot down there, but some of them are quite fragile. On to turn 3 for the dwarves. So the double charge does go in on the bruiser. One of them hindered over the wall though. So slowing down the shooting by getting into combat with them. And if we just keep exchanging units here, if they delete that bruiser, the trolls could then go into the already damaged dwarf unit there, and I would expect to get something juicy out of that. And then I've got the mincer and the war trombone around that could potentially have a go at the other unit. Over here you can see that there's a little bit of movement going on there, but not much. One of the characters has moved out from behind the wall to have a shot at my mincer, I believe. So the mincer becomes wavered as a result of a little bit of damage, and they target the trombone as well. So recognising that those two units were a threat and getting the waver on both of them, the troll horde there have taken a tiny bit more damage, I think, but they don't suffer any ill effects. And the bruiser only becomes wavered as a result of this combat, so that's very bad news for the dwarves, because now they're going to be flanked, which is going to mean almost certain death for that unit on the right, and the unit above is just kind of blocked in by the bruiser now. So up to 10 damage. His nerve is 12-15, so yeah, it wasn't a ridiculously bad roll to only waver him, but you would still hope to kill him in that situation, since he does inspire himself, so it's not completely ridiculous. Then you can see that there's 3 wavered units for the goblins now, so it's going to be a quick turn. Here we go, turn 4 for the goblins. So I've set up the flagget down there so we can use his diadem and also inspire both those units next to him. And with all those shooting attacks, just put 1 damage plinked onto the steel juggernaut. The trolls that have the dwarven ale that were previously wavered but weren't this time, then charge into the elves in the field and kill them, which is tasty. The trolls, of course, flanking the dwarves, eat them for breakfast. I actually forget to turn the bruiser around to face the other dwarf unit, so he's probably going to get killed. But thinking about it, he was already on 8 damage. So he's probably going to get killed whether they charge him in the front or the flank, to be honest. So it's probably not going to make that much of a difference, but it is something to think about. Remember to change your facing, even if you can't do much else. And with him being nimble as well, when he's wavered, he does have other options, but I thought that was a decent place to leave him because he's kind of blocking that unit. So that's how it looks at the end of that turn, and the scoring units are running low for the dwarves / elves now. They've only got 2 left, and I've still got 5 scoring units alive. So for this scenario, it's looking healthy at the moment. Turn 4 for the dwarves / elves. So they're going to flank the bruiser again, which will have to be acceptable because I forgot to turn him, and he'd probably die anyway. The steel juggernaut into the trolls that are already on 5 damage, so we'll see what he can do. and the characters have just popped out, and they waver that trombone again. Oh, I think they actually kill it this time. Is that the trombone? Oh no, they waver the trombone, but this blank space is the mincer, which has been killed. So the mincer's dead. And the troll bruiser's dead. So the trolls against those dwarves, I would fancy the trolls to win that fight. Neither unit is damaged. I'll get the first hit in. So I think if they keep going, the trolls should ultimately win out there. The steel juggernaut wavers the trolls that have the dwarven ale, so we'll see whether that keeps them wavered or whether they just shrug it off. And there's how it's looking now. So a little bit accomplished there for the dwarves, so it's definitely not over yet. Turn 5 for the goblins. So the fleabag sniffs have just danced back into this area just to claim it. They're not even going to get involved in the game anymore because they're so fragile that those shooty characters could actually kill them in one round, so they're just hiding from them to preserve their point scoring ability. The trolls in the field do manage to shrug off the effects of their waver due to the dwarven ale, and then they countercharge into the steel juggernaut and kill it. Very nice. And these trolls not countercharge, they just charge straight into these rangers, Hanaeus's Hunters of Doom. I think that these are the regular dwarf rangers, are they? Or these may be the Hanaeus's special ones. I can't remember. I think they all have the same stats with the formation and the upgrades that they were given anyway. But regardless, they are wavered, which may not matter since they're dwarves, but we'll see about that. 5 damage though, it's a good start. And that's their only scoring unit now. So it's looking very healthy for the goblin forces. Turn 5 for the dwarves. So what do these heroes do? Well, you can see that that unit has remained wavered, which is bad news for them. With the shooting attacks, they do shoot up this unit of trolls, which are only partially in the field. We established that they didn't have 50% in there at the time of taking the damage, so it was a bit easier to shoot them, but they don't waver them or anything. Turn 6 for the goblins. So the trolls have just shuffled into this field to give themselves some cover against the shooting because they're not going to be able to reach anybody and they'd rather stay here. And the Flaggit is just hiding there as well to make sure he doesn't get shot so he can keep inspiring them. And the Sniffs are still hiding, just claiming that table quarter. The trolls charge into the dwarves again and waver them again, but only roll 3 to accomplish that waver on the nerve check. So still looking healthy though. Turn 6 for the dwarves / elves. So what should they do at this stage? Well, they need to pass their headstrong roll, they need to kill the trolls, and they need to use the 2 individuals to shoot up one of my scoring units, really. But will they even try and do that? Because it's a bit of a long shot since the trolls are in cover right now. Let's see, so what do they go for? They do try and shoot up the trolls, and they don't really do anything. Let's see, were they on 7 damage before? I think they may have done 1 extra damage to them, but not enough to even waver them. So they're not concerned by that. The dwarves do pass their headstrong roll this time and get 2 damage on the trolls, which isn't going to be enough to worry them. And there's how it's looking at the end of turn 6. So if it were to end right now, the trolls are claiming the top right, which is worth 2 victory points. The trolls in the top left are claiming 1, and the fleabag sniffs are claiming 1 down here as well. So it would be 4-0 to the goblins if it ended now, but we do have turn 7. So the trolls massacre those dwarves that only just survived by the skin of their teeth in the last turn. The war trombone closes in, and I think it does a bit of damage to that hero. And everyone else is just staying where they are, keeping in position to claim points. So at this stage, there's no scoring units left for the dwarves and elves. All they can do, if it was a tournament, you would look at what you're likely to kill to get your tournament kill points up. So they're probably going to be looking to kill off the war trombone. That's going to be the easiest target. Since the trolls have been regenerating, they're now on 4 damage in that field, so they're not an easy target. So turn 7, and what do they do? These 2 heroes, Hanaeus and the ranger captain, well, they do shoot off the trombone. So the trombone is dead, but you can see that table quarter claimed by the trolls. 2 points, 1 point for this one, 1 point for this one, and nobody is claiming the table quarter here. So that means at the end of the game, it's 4 points for the Goblins, 0 for the Dwarven/Elven alliance. And overall, I think this list performed pretty well there. It did mostly what I wanted it to do. A couple of things I maybe should have done differently. The Mincer didn't really see action, but it was a good distraction and deterrent. However, against a list like this in future, I may well just stick it on the front lines. It's especially useful at that now that it doesn't have yellow-bellied anymore, so you don't even have to worry about holding up other units. And the Sniffs, in this game it wasn't ideal for them, because they can deal with really low-level, like chaff-clearing shooting. They could take a lightning bolt to the face and not worry too much, whereas a troop of Sniffs would be concerned by a lightning bolt. The regiment don't care so much. But when you're up against lots of elite kind of standard shooting, like you can have with elves and with these dwarf rangers, that's when they can find themselves getting taken off if you pop their head out. So the unit on the hill displayed that. They were killed off quite easily. So there will be lists that I'll most likely face where those Sniffs are much more useful because they're not that shooty resistant. So if I'm against a combat heavy army, I'll be able to manoeuvre them round, threaten flanks, not worry about keeping them inspired so much, and then just ping shots onto the enemy. And you really have to deal with them though, because those shots will add up, depending what you've got in your list, of course. So they can be useful, but this wasn't the perfect game for them by any means. The Trolls did their job though. Staying Stone definitely helped a lot. And I think the Dwarven/Elven list, I think perhaps it's maybe too far in the shooty direction. It's quite scary. I can imagine it being a concern for certain armies, but I think it needs a little bit more of a punch or something that isn't elves in there. And I believe that is what's happened with the list. I think the elves have either been replaced by something else or something's gone in there in place of an elf unit. So we'll see about that when it comes to the tournament. I think the lists are going to be posted shortly after I'm recording this, so it's not going to be too much of a spoiler if I tell you that. And I do happen to come up against this same army at the tournament. And that is that. So it's a victory for the Goblins heading into the tournament. I'm fairly confident with this list. I think it's quite good. There are certain things that would worry me, obviously, like there's all kinds of things at each tournament, and if you get unlucky and get paired up with just the ultimate lists that are set up to take out what you've brought, then there's not always that much you can do about it. You just have to try and weasel your way to a victory, play the scenarios where possible, even if it's not a favourable matchup. I could see certain armies, possibly really fast, hard-hitting armies, causing trouble, because the Fleabag Sniffs are my only unit that can really use speed and close the distance and try and hit something, and something like, let's say, an elf dragon wouldn't be concerned with being charged by Fleabag Sniffs, even if it held him up for a turn. The question is, how much of that really fast, hard-hitting stuff can you fit into 1250 points? And I suppose we'll find out, because I'm sure there's going to be some lists that are very, very scary indeed at the event. We'll have to wait and see though. Right, time to wrap this one up. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and join my Facebook group and all that malarkey. Don't forget to send me all your money, and so on. And with that, all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.